You know when you start hearing a trend or feel like everyone seems to be mentioning the same thing no matter where you go? That's how I feel about Andy Crouch's book, The Tech Wise Family. I don't know about you, but technology is a constant source of conversation in our home as we try to navigate a culture of technology so different from when we were kids. All of Andy's books are chock full of relevant ways to live well in a constantly changing culture. But today, we get to hear from him on the Tech Wise Family. So let me introduce you to our friend, Andy Crouch.
We're going to talk about parenting and technology. A set of questions, a set of choices that our parents, our grandparents really didn't have to make, and we have to figure it out. People often think when I talk about this that what we're going to talk about is screen time limits for kids. And I will talk about that a little bit, but I want to say that this session is really about something bigger. It's not just about limits. I don't really want to parent by limits, by what my kids can't do. I want to parent by what we really want. And so we're going to talk really about what we most desire for ourselves and for our children. And it's not actually just about screens. There's a whole host of devices in our homes that are reshaping the way we live as families. And I want us to look at our homes more carefully and ask, what good are these devices doing? And what good are they preventing? And how can we use them better? And if it's not just about limits, and it's not just about screens, it's also definitely not just about the kids. It's about the parents too. It's about all of us. When you ask teenagers, what's the number one thing you'd like to change in your relationship with your parents? The most common answer is they say, I wish my parents weren't on their phone so much and would pay attention to me more. So this is definitely not just about the children. It's about all of us together. So if it's not about limits, but it's about what we really want, let's think for a few moments about what we really want. First of all, for our children, and then also for our families as a whole. When I think about when my children were preschoolers, they're now in college and late high school, I think about how I wanted them to learn. I want my kids all through their developmental phase of life and really all the way into adulthood to be learners. And one of the things we're learning about technology and devices is they often don't actually help us learn. The fact is, you retain information better when you read it on a page than when you read it on a screen. You retain it better if your whole body is involved in learning rather than just sitting very still. And technology is being introduced a lot of times way too early for kids to learn. But there's something deeper I want for my kids than just learning. And the word I would use for it is wisdom. I want my children, as they grow, to not just grow in knowledge of facts. That actually, you can Google a lot of facts now. You can get a lot of facts through our devices. But I want our kids to have a deeper kind of knowledge. I want them to have, I think, deep knowledge of themselves, others, God, and the world. And deep knowledge of self, others, God, and the world is really what wisdom is. This is one of the most fundamental things family provides us, a context to develop wisdom. And again, it's not just about the kids developing wisdom. All of us in the crucible that is family and that is especially parenting, especially the early stages of parenting, we learn all kinds of things about ourselves that we might not have really wanted to know. We learn how to deeply attend to and pay attention to another person. We learn things about our need for God that we had no idea about. And as we experience the world together as parents and children, we grow in knowledge of the world. Basically, none of this is helped by the devices that we have. This kind of deep learning only happens as we engage very deeply with one another without actually the distractions that devices often provide us. So the first question we're going to ask about every device that comes into our house is this helping me and my children develop wisdom, deep knowledge of self, God, others, and the world? And is there a way to use it that actually develops wisdom? And are there other ways that we tend to use it that don't develop wisdom? I'll talk about that a little more in a moment. The other thing I want my kids to develop and that you kind of celebrate at every stage of parenting is skill, right? The ability to actually use your body and use this amazing combination of brain, mind, soul, heart, strength to act in the world with skill. We watch our kids developing all these different kinds of skills, even very early on. Learning to talk, learning to walk, often learning to dress themselves, learning to go to the toilet by themselves. And in a typical developmental sequence of a child, not all children are typical, but as our children grow, in whatever ways they do, we celebrate that because they're developing the ability to be fully human in the world. Again, we're learning that a lot of technology actually doesn't help us develop skill. It's good at expressing skills we already have. So if you're already good at talking, you can talk in the telephone to your grandparents, or you can talk on Skype to distant relatives. But it doesn't help you learn to talk. That happens through person-to-person interaction. If you're good at a sport, it's great to capture that on film when your children are older and celebrate it. But video games don't make you good at a sport. Wii tennis is not the same as actual tennis. You have to actually be out there in the world, in your body, and devices really don't help very much in the kinds of skills that we want our kids to develop. And just as there's something deeper than learning that I think we'd call wisdom, there's something deeper than skill. And that's when we have to use skill at moments when it's really hard or really dangerous or scary. And all of us are going to face moments in our life when we have to do something that's difficult or even something that is quite scary. We hope this doesn't happen early for our children, but we'll never be able to save them from the moments in their lives when they will need courage. And I think courage is the deeper form of skill, just like wisdom is the deeper form of learning. So we have to ask ourselves, are these devices actually helping our children develop courage? And I think the honest truth is most devices don't do anything to develop courage in us. So we've talked about what we really want for our families, wisdom and courage. And this is where we have to think not just about glowing rectangles or screens, not just about smartphones, but actually about all the devices that have been introduced into the home in the span really of a single lifetime, my parents' lifetime. My parents are now grandparents. When they were children, there were almost none of the technological devices that we now take for granted. And this is not just televisions and not just smartphones. It's things like the telephone. It's things like the microwave oven. And when you add up all the devices we've brought into the home of just a typical family, it adds up to what I think of as the essential quality of technology, or the essential promise of technology, which is easy everywhere. What technology promises us, first of all, is to make our lives easy. And over time, we've introduced into our homes all kinds of devices that make our lives genuinely easier. They relieve us of all kinds of burdens that our parents and grandparents especially had to bear, and that for generations people had to put up with in a way. And then what technology does as it develops is it's not just making things easier in one place, it's making it easier everywhere. It's filling our homes with the ability to just press a button or call out to Alexa or whatever device you might use and just have things happen without us having to do any work. Now, obviously, there's all kinds of benefits to the easy everywhere of technology, but there are some real downsides when you're thinking about the development of wisdom and courage. Because the easier your life is, and the more thoroughly easy it is, the more that easy is just everywhere in your life, the less opportunity you have to really learn, and the less opportunity you have to really develop skill. So I think about how this has affected the way children see their parents. Do children today, in our world of easy everywhere, see their parents exercising skill? So think about how many children used to see their mother cooking in the kitchen from scratch. And she would start with raw ingredients. I remember watching my grandmother bake rolls, starting just with flour and shortening and eggs and a few other ingredients, and working that dough on the counter. I got to be part of it. And I watched her put it in the oven. I watched her take them out, these beautiful rolls that we still make every Thanksgiving and Christmas in our house. My me mama's rolls, my grandmother's rolls, were the expression of skill that she developed over years making these rolls, baking and cooking for her large family. It's still possible to cook like that. But you could also now just take something out of the freezer, put it in the microwave, press the little add 30 seconds button like 3 times, and you have dinner, or maybe even rolls. And obviously this makes our lives a lot easier, having this option of quickly prepared food. But what it takes away is children never see their mother exercising real skill in the kitchen. And if that's what kids often saw their mother doing, children often saw their fathers working on the car in the driveway. And I know some mothers worked on cars and some fathers worked in the kitchen, but let's go with the kind of gender roles that were typical in our pre-technological time. You'd go out and you'd watch your dad working on the car. And this was back when you actually could work on cars because cars were mechanical. They were not yet the sort of fully computational devices we have now. And when you watched your dad work on the car, you saw him exercising skill, strength, a kind of courage, a kind of wisdom, knowing how cars worked. You also often learned vocabulary words you didn't learn any other time when your dad encountered some frustration. And in the pre-technological era, children watched their parents exercise skill that the children aspired to learn. And they could admire their parents as they exercised that skill. The more our homes are full of easy everywhere, the less children see their parents exercising skill. We all become consumers. All of us, whether we're 3 years old or 43 years old or 83 years old, can push the button on the microwave. There's nothing to learn there, nothing to admire there. So if we want our children to grow up actually admiring us, learning things from us, learning things alongside us, we're going to have to limit our use of devices. So if technology prevents our children from seeing us exercising wisdom and courage, it actually also prevents all of us from developing wisdom and courage. And for this, I just think about one of the classic challenges of early stage parenting, which is the trip to the grocery store. So you need to get 1 or 2 toddlers to and from the grocery store, get the grocery stores, and have nobody die or kill each other or want to kill each other. And this is strangely, amazingly difficult to strap a child into the car seat, get them to the grocery store and back. If you want to solve this problem today, the grocery store trip problem, if you hand your child a glowing rectangle that is designed to be easy to use, a 3-year-old can figure it out, it has these incredibly vivid and engaging games, they will sit there in total blissful silence all the way to the grocery store and back. The only problem is, in that beautiful, quiet trip to the grocery store, no one learned anything. No one became anything different. You solved the problem today, but tomorrow you're going to have to give them the tablet again. What if we thought instead about something as simple as a trip to the grocery store as a chance to develop wisdom and courage for both parents and children? It takes a lot of wisdom and courage to figure out how to put up with being seated right next to your sibling in the back of the minivan, not being able to just go wherever you want. This is an opportunity for both you as the parent and for your child to figure out how to live as a human being with the limits and constraints and obligations we have as human beings. You can solve the problem today with a tablet or with a smartphone. But if you want to actually have a child who grows in wisdom and courage, the tablet or the smartphone are going to do nothing to help them grow. So if we want to develop wisdom and courage in our children and in us, in our whole family, I think there are some choices we're able to make that will make a big difference. Some of these choices are ones that my wife and I made as we were raising our kids, and others are choices we wish we had made and have seen other families make, and we really admire the results. And let me just talk about kind of 4 big ones. The first is about space. It's actually about the literal space you live in. Think about the part of your house where your family spends the most time. What we decided to do in that part of our house, I'm filming this in my home in the first floor of our house where our family spends almost all of our time together. We decided we wanted this space to be full of opportunities to create rather than to consume. To not be full of devices, but actually have almost no devices at all. We got rid of all the glowing rectangles. The television is downstairs. The smartphones and the tablets get plugged in when we come into the house. And as much as possible, we keep our first floor, where the family spends most of our time, free of all these invitations to easy everywhere. And instead, we had a craft table by the big picture window when the kids were little, so they could always draw, they could always be making things. We have lots of books. We bought a grand piano using the kids' college savings, because any kid can grow up and go to college, but how many kids get to grow up with a grand piano? And of course, there's a kitchen and there's a dining table with candles that you can light at dinner. And what we were trying to do with all this was to say to our kids, even before we could explain it to them, life is about what we make together and the skill we develop together, and it's about being together. And those devices that so easily kind of separate us from one another, that entertain us without us having to do anything, those are going to be peripheral to our lives. But what's going to be central are things that allow us to actually engage in the world with skill and wisdom and eventually with courage. So think about literally reshaping your home, rearranging the furniture to put creativity and skill and engagement at the center and distraction and entertainment just at the edges. If we want to watch TV, which we do once a month or so, we go down to the basement and we can watch it there. But in the heart of our home, it's about what we create together. The second choice we can make is about time. Human beings are designed for rhythm. Our devices don't have to have a rhythm. They can be on all the time, 24/7, but we can't. We're not designed to be awake 24/7. We're not designed to be active every day of the week. We're designed for this rhythm of work and rest. So what we decided to do in our family was have a rhythm of use and non-use of our devices. The way we do it is 1 hour a day, 1 day a week, and 1 week or sometimes 2 weeks a year, we turn off everything that has an off switch. All the laptops get closed. All the smartphones get shut down. 1 hour a day, for us that's dinner time. We set aside all those glowing rectangles and we're just together for a solid hour. 1 day a week, for us that's Sunday. We turn everything off and it's a day free of technology as much as possible and as much as possible of engagement with the natural world, with other people, cooking food, enjoying life together, playing together, rather than the device-based life that so easily takes over the rest of the week. And then 1 week a year, we turn it all off. Our family is fortunate to be able to take a solid week or two of vacation, and we leave the devices behind on that vacation. If you have this rhythm in your life of 1 hour a day, 1 day a week, 1 week a year, when none of you, this is parents and children, are using devices, we're all kind of letting them rest, letting ourselves rest, it makes a huge difference in how we use them the rest of the time. Those two big choices, if you just reshape space and put creativity at the center and consumption at the edges, and reshape time having this rhythm of on and off, daily, weekly, yearly, can make a huge difference in actually developing wisdom and courage as a family. But let me just give you two more very specific ones, because it's a big issue. In research for the book, Tech-Wise Family, we found that 82% of teenagers sleep with their phones next to them at night. This is a bad idea, not just for teenagers, but for us parents too. I really think one of the best choices my family has made is to get the phones out of the bedroom for both children and for parents. It's especially important as children get to the teenage years because the teenage years are so intense, and to bring all that intensity of adolescent life into the bedroom with you and to have those notifications going off all night, which they do, is the worst possible thing for sleep, for rest, for perspective, for a healthy kind of rhythm of life. And it's not good for us parents either to have these things in our bedrooms. So in our home, when we go to bed, the phones go to bed before we do, and they go to bed downstairs, not in our bedrooms. The other small but significant choice we made as a family was that car time, rather than being device time, white earbuds in the ears time, was actually going to be conversation time. Car time is conversation time. We just drilled that into our kids. We never let them know that you could have it any other way. And actually, it ended up being some of the best conversations I've had with my kids at all stages of their lives, starting when they were just old enough to babble all the way up to now when they're 17 and 20 years old. Some of our best times of conversation have been those car drives, short or long, where we're stuck with each other and have to figure out what to talk about. It's so easy to let car time be distraction time, when in fact, you're never going to get solid, uninterrupted moments with your children the way you will in the car. And if you can learn how to actually talk in the car, sometimes about very trivial things, sometimes it'll end up being about really deep things, you may find that some of your most significant memories of parenting actually came in those times when other people are just driving around with their earbuds in their ears. If we make these kinds of choices, and they all come down to asking, is this device helping us develop wisdom and courage? And if not, setting it aside and doing something that does develop wisdom and courage. What's going to happen for us, our children, and our families? You don't get lots of triumphant moments in parenting, but my wife and I did get one of these moments a few years ago when our children were, I think, 16 and 13. And they were sitting in the back seat, and they were actually talking about how different our family was in our use of technology. I think every kid just needs to grow up hearing over and over from their parents, our family is different. But different is not always easy. And our daughter was talking about how hard it was to be in middle school and just not know a lot of the pop cultural references, a lot of the media that her friends watched, she didn't watch. And her brother, 3 years older than her, was kind of being a big brother. And he said, well, Amy, this is because our parents actually are intentional about what's good for us. And they've thought through, in a way that maybe other parents haven't, what would be really good for us to encounter and engage in. And they start having this conversation in the back seat about how different we are and how much harder that is and how much better it is. And Catherine and I are just sitting in the front, driving along and listening and giving each other a kind of quiet high five. This is what you can hope for. It's not going to be easy to make different choices about devices than our neighbors do, and often even our neighbors in church do. But if you stick with it, you'll end up with kids who are incredibly grateful that you formed them in wisdom and courage, and that they got to see you exercise wisdom and courage. The default setting of our world is easy everywhere. But easy everywhere is not making us the kind of people we really want to be. We are going to have to choose something different and better. We're going to have to help our children choose something different and better. And if we do, I think we can develop the kind of wisdom and courage that we want for ourselves, our children, and really for the world. Let's choose something different and better together.